Senator Rosen, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Chairman Peters, Ranking Member Paul. Thank you, all of you, for being here today and your testimony, because this hearing and finding solutions, it not only matters to patients, to ourselves, to our own budgets, people's kitchen table budget, what they pay, their access, rural and urban, but I would say it's also not just our national security, but our economy. So the implications, personal and nationwide, worldwide, have a huge impact. And so we have to figure out what those incentives are. We're going to build on what some of my colleagues have already said to increase pharmaceutical independence, because we know 80% of the key ingredients, they come from overseas. China and India, I'm not going to say what my colleagues have already said, but like others on the committee, I, of course, am concerned about this over-reliance and the risk it poses, again, to families, to the ones we love and their health care, and their ability to get it, and our national security as well. And last Congress, I worked with Senator Tim Scott to introduce the Made in America Act. It's bipartisan legislation to create a tax credit for pharmaceutical manufacturers to operate in certain distressed communities across the United States, creating good-paying jobs and retaking control of our drug supply chain. I'm pleased at the number of the FDA-related provisions of our bill were passed into law as part of the FY23 omnibus. And so if we're serious about this, I do agree we need to do a better job bringing life-saving drugs here. So Dr. Fox, a core pillar of the Made in America Act was to increase collaboration between FDA's drug shortage staff and the Office of Compliance. Both are mission critical, we know that, in helping prevent these shortages and monitoring supply chains. So how should the FDA be thinking about implementing this provision and linking these two important offices together? What can we do there?
Thank you so much for that question, Senator Rosen. You know, those two offices do work together closely, but usually it's only during a drug shortage. Outside of that, they don't often work together. And so certainly you could envision if Congress is able to change the labeling laws to require drug companies to disclose where products are made, perhaps where their sources are made. Perhaps the Offices of Compliance could work much closer together with FDA to try to enforce that.
To give a better bill of materials, if you will.
Yes.
And do you have any other incentives you might like us to try to do while we work on being sure that we can build this collaboration?
You know, I think it's important to think about how we do need private industry to make changes, especially to their quality, and if we're also going to ask them to do a little bit more work to reveal their sources of where they're manufacturing drugs. The societal benefits are much, much greater than any benefit the manufacturers could get. And so I think we need to structure incentives appropriately, but certainly with Office of Compliance and FDA working closer together, we could probably get there.
Yeah, I think it's good to have transparency, that's for sure. And we want to think about some other ways that we can potentiate this and how we support our nonprofit pharmaceutical industry as well. That's another big component. And so tackling these drug shortages, increasing the access, of course, to critical medications. I don't have to tell any of you. It's an all-of-the-above approach. There's not just one thing that's going to fix it. It's going to be many little things, perhaps. And so without the need to maximize profits, shareholders, worrying about shareholders, nonprofits, maybe they can focus on lower prices to stabilize supply, lower costs, and again, improve access across the country. It's all about saving people's lives in the long run, right? So I'm pleased in the omnibus was signed into law legislation that I co-wrote with Senator Romney to direct the GAO to study the impact of nonprofit generic drug companies that they would have on lowering these drug costs, addressing the drug shortages, and accelerating the development of new drugs. Some of my colleagues have already asked questions to that. But what I want to ask, I guess I'll keep picking on you, Dr. Fox, today. We have such a great panel and not enough time for every question, but how can the nonprofit pharmaceutical model, how can that help to mitigate the shortages, particularly given its focus on maximizing access to life-saving medication, particularly in those underserved areas, urban and, of course, rural?
Thank you so much for that question. You know, I am very familiar with one of the nonprofit drug companies, which is Civica RX, which is based in Utah. I do serve as a volunteer on their advisory board. That company is really focused on making high quality medications inside the United States. They have a factory that's almost ready in Virginia. They're also partnering with a company to make the active pharmaceutical ingredients in the US as well with Flow. That was a little bit of the money spent during COVID. You guys did actually give some to Flow for that. So, you know, these nonprofit pharmaceutical companies are able to make high quality products, focus in on you know, building better facilities, building a more resilient supply. The way that Civica works is that our hospital has to make a long-term commitment to buy a certain amount of product. And what that does is that allows the nonprofit company to know exactly how much to make. They're not in a guessing game of being in a price war with somebody. We've committed to buy that product. And those, you know, reliable supply agreements really do help shore up the overall supply chain.
It's terrific, and thank you again all for being here. And at the end of the day, it's about the health of the ones we love, the availability, the accessibility, the affordability, and we need to bring that back here. Thank you.